All right, everybody. I'm going to do something a little different for today's episode. Yesterday was my birthday, and I didn't have at the time, didn't have really the desire to set up an interview and get that going just because I wanted to spend time with my family yesterday. So today's episode, I'm going to be doing a short film about my recruitment as a baseball player and how I ended up. Some of you may or may not know I played at the University of Florida after high school. So kind of talk about that and how I got there. I was actually committed to a different school at a point during my junior year. So kind of that, I have a couple good stories in that recruitment process and kind of how I ended up at Florida. And should be some good things in here for you guys to check out. So stay tuned. All right, so like I said, this will be my recruiting video. I guess my recruiting started in my freshman year of high school. I was at the Bowl School in Jacksonville, Florida. It's a very good private school. Our sports program was rated number 7 in the country by Sports Illustrated while I was there. So it's a very good program. Was having a very good freshman year of baseball, and I actually on the same day got just a kind of a basic letter recruiting questionnaire from Arkansas and South Carolina, which I thought was cool, but didn't really understand like how big of a deal as for an SEC school and stuff. But that was kind of how it all started. I got a couple letters, just stuff like that, starting out my freshman year questionnaires. Where my recruitment really picked up as far as a school that I wanted to go to was my uncle was scouting at the time with the Minnesota Twins down in Florida. And back then, the ACC tournament was held in Jacksonville. So while they were there, he was friends with the Clemson assistant coach, Kevin O'Sullivan. And he was in Jacksonville my uncle was in Jacksonville covering the game. So he brought him over to our high school to watch me hit the one day and all that. And that kind of kicked off my recruiting process with them. That fall, I went up to Clemson for an unofficial visit. And things were going good, talking to the coaches and stuff. And obviously, you can't make a dollar amount scholarship offer at that point legally and stuff. So we were just kind of talking. And that was on a Saturday in September. And the following Friday is when I tore my ACL my sophomore year of high school in football. So that kind of, not that they lost interest, but it just kind of backed off and just worried about doing my rehab and getting back from that. And in the course of that, we ended up moving back to Pennsylvania at the end of my sophomore year. So I wasn't really worried about the recruiting part that much. Just kind of getting healthy and obviously into football season and all that. So at the end of in the middle of my junior year and during wrestling season in December, I started getting the University of North Florida, which we've known the coaching staff there for a long time when they started their baseball program. Dusty Rhodes was the head coach, who was my Uncle Brad's college coach at Palm Beach Junior College down in Florida. My uncle coached with him. He was the first assistant coach at UNF when they started out as NAIA school. They made the transition to Division II. And then when I was in high school, they were in the process of making the transition to Division I. So they had texted me and made me an offer that was a really good offer that I really liked. I was familiar with the program. I really liked the coaches. Obviously, like I said, Dusty was the head coach. Coach Shepard, Bob Shepard, was the assistant coach, who I had known for a while. I felt really comfortable with the coaching staff, and it was a place that I'd been around my entire life, being a bat boy and stuff, because when we lived in Jacksonville and being around the program. So I ended up committing there to UNF in the December of my junior year. And I was very comfortable with that decision. If I would have ended up there, it would have been great. One thing that changed for me going forward was coaching changes, and I can't stress this enough. I think a lot of times kids make commitments, and then adults, like the college coaches, if the kid is thinking about changing his mind, a guy will say, well, you made a commitment. You need to honor your word. I'm a 17-year-old kid that made a commitment, and then things change. You can't always see that happening. For me, it was a coaching change. Kevin O'Sullivan, who I said would recruited me at Clemson, became the head coach at Florida, and he hired my Uncle Brad as an assistant coach. So that obviously it's a big change in that dynamic of the landscape of if that was an option and available when I made my decision to commit, I probably wouldn't have committed to UNF in the first place. So I think that's one thing that stuff changes and new coaches are hired somewhere or coaches leave, and these college coaches are so afraid of a kid leaving, they think they need to. I see it as bullying a kid into saying, well, you made a commitment, you need to honor your word and this and that. So I think it's kind of crap and I understand that if you say you want to go there, the coach kind of has some understanding that you're giving them your word and you want to go there. But until those papers are signed and until college coaches are guaranteeing they're not going to leave if a better job offer comes available, then I think it's crap that they do stuff like that. But I'll kind of get to that point. A couple funny stories from my recruiting. On July 1st, between your junior and senior year, you're allowed to get phone calls. And so I knew that, and I was kind of excited. I didn't know if other schools would call me or kind of what would go on. And the first call I got that day was about 10 a.m. I got a call from a number I didn't know. I answered and said, "Hello, this is Coach so-and-so. I'm assistant coach at the University of Maryland." So I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. It's an ACC school, at the time, before they went to the Big Ten." But that's pretty cool. So the guy starts talking to me and stuff. He says, "We've heard a lot about you, heard good things and everything, and just looking forward to getting to know you a little bit." And he said, "What weight are you going to be wrestling this year for high school?" And I'm like, "Man, that's kind of weird that coach for baseball maybe one asked about wrestling season, but it's kind of weird he would ask me what weight I was going." And so I said, "Oh, I'll be wrestling 189." And he said, "What is that easy for you to make? Would it be hard for you to make? Would you be able to make 184 in the future?" And I'm like, "Man, I'm not really understanding why this guy is so concerned about what weight class I'm wrestling for my senior year of high school." So I said, "Yeah, it's pretty easy for me to make, but I don't understand why I would have to make 184 in the future." And he said, "Oh, I don't know if you know college weight classes, in that area are 174, 184, 197. And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm not planning on wrestling in college." And he said, "Oh, well, I'm the assistant wrestling coach." So we got kind of mixed up. He was calling me about wrestling. I thought I was just thinking about straight baseball coaches calling me. So I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I plan on playing baseball in college. I got a couple offers already and stuff." He said, "Oh, shit, if I had a chance to pick baseball over wrestling, I would do that too. So good luck to you. And if you ever change your mind, give me a call." So I thought that was pretty funny. Good story that completely crossed up of why he was worried so much about my wrestling. But another good story was I went to play in the area code or the East Coast Pro Showcase. That year that I played was in Lakeland, Florida, and then flew to Long Beach, California for the area code games. Played in that. At the area code games, I actually had a pretty good week out there. And a couple of new schools called me. I didn't want to, like I said, I was still committed theoretically to UNF. But I didn't want to just completely blow people off and say, "Hey, I can't listen to anything you have to say." So I got a call from Texas A&M. Guy called me and started talking to me and, "Hey, we saw you play at area codes. We're interested. We think you'd be a good fit for our program. You play hard. You're a little a grinder, a dirtbag, whatever you want to call it. So we're interested in in talking to you." And so he's telling me about their program and all this stuff. And back then they were in the Big 12. So he's telling me about that, and he kind of asked me, "What other schools are you considering?" And I said, "Well, I really like University of North Florida. I've known the coach for a long time, this and that." And I said, "I'm very interested in the University of Florida." And before I could even say anything else, he said, "Oh, I don't know, I don't know how much of the landscape you know of college baseball," which one is stupid on his part. My dad's a professional scout, kind of know what's going on in the area, what is big time college baseball theoretically versus, mid-major baseball and stuff. So he says, UNF, their Division II program, just making the transition to Division I. So it's when they do make the transition, there'll be a mid-major program. And then at the University of Florida, they just hired 2 scouts as assistant coaches, so they'll probably just be more recruiters and not know that much about coaching. And at that time, I was so stunned that he said it that I didn't really say anything to him, and he kept going with his recruiting kind of a spiel for a little while. And I'm like, "Man, you didn't even do any research at all. My last name's Weitzel. The new assistant coach at Florida is Weitzel. Not that you would just assume that we're related, but it's not like it's Smith and Smith or Johnson and Johnson. Like, It's a pretty unique last name, so you maybe would do some homework on it. And so at the end, he said, I want to call you back next week, make an official scholarship offer, and invite you down to campus for an official visit for a football game. And he said, how's that sound? And I debated on what to say, but I finally said, just so you know, one of the assistant coaches that got hired at Florida is my uncle, and I promise you, I guarantee he knows more about baseball than you ever will, so there's no need for you to call me back next week or ever. And I hung up the phone, kind of like a mic drop moment, which I thought was pretty cool. But I just think that if you're going to be a college coach recruiting kids, you need to kind of have some sense and do some background work before you just contact them, if you can. And if you knew enough that Florida had hired 2 assistant coaches that were scouts, you should maybe know their last name and my last name, and they're the same thing, and just maybe kind of have some caution towards it. But so that was a pretty funny one. And then going into my senior year, early in the year, I broke my collarbone, our first game of football. And I had some time off from football, and I'd kind of gotten my offers from Florida and UNF, and some of the other programs knew what they offered, but really the only 2 I really thought about were UNF and Florida. And so I ended up right around probably Labor Day of my senior year. I just really sat down and thought about it, and just my uncle had stayed out of my recruitment a lot. I didn't really talk to him. When he first got the job, I had called him, and he said, we can get you a scholarship, we'll get you a library card, but that was kind of all I really talked to him about. He left the decision and the recruiting up to Sully, the head coach, and Craig Bell, the other assistant coach. But I just really, the chance to be there in a major program in the SEC, and knowing Sully's passion, I knew we were going to turn it around. They were a good program, but had never really got over the hump. And I knew with that coaching staff and with the guys they were bringing in that we would. So just a chance to be a part of that. I'd be around, family, my cousins, Lucas and Lane and stuff. So that was what ended up making the decision for me. Just the chance, like I said, the big time college program, and the family that was being around. Hardest call I've ever had to make in my life was calling Coach Rhodes at UNF and letting him know that I was deciding to go there. And he even said, he goes, if this is anybody else besides your uncle that you changed your mind for, I'd kick your ass, but I understand because it's him. So he was cool. He was very understanding about it. He got that if that didn't change, that coaching staff didn't change, that I would still be going to UNF. So, I'm very thankful that he had that attitude towards it. So that's kind of my recruiting story. A couple funny stories in there with the wrestling and the Texas A&M thing. So I've always had, forever since then, I've always disliked Texas A&M just for that. But well, hopefully we'll keep getting these guys on here for these episodes and kind of talk about their recruiting story. I always personally have interest in kind of where guys, how they got to where they are, and maybe what their other choices were and how they made that decision. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for more.